Namaste and welcome, beloved mighty companions. What a joy. What a joy to ask Jesus everything and hear the answers. To be so completely wrong about everything, we can actually be happy as we are. Instead of whatever idea that was, I don't know what that was. He said we'd forget, we'd have amnesia, and that sounds best. Really, whatever ideas I thought about the world, I'm putting them right in this light circle. Because in this direct looking, I'm so grateful for this, just to have that immediate retranslation of all that desire, like the itch for the debris field and to play in debris, and to have that so immediately where we're looking, okay, Jesus, show me the desire, that itch to say no to infinite love. So here we go in another ask me session with Jesus, and having this deep for here, so that the bird lands in the heart. So it's not like metaphysics, like way over there. Like, what is that? What is, and see that access that we have as divine beings to revelatory experience. Like, it's not something that's going to come. Like, I think I've mentioned this before. I thought, well, when you see that there's just light, like all the lights are going to go out throughout. When I was in Portugal, I thought, well, you're waiting for the lightning to strike. Because there's a concept about really what revelation is, because you hear about, oh my gosh, I had this revelatory experience and I went to light and then it was this, and perhaps that will happen. I can't say. Revelation here has always been, oh, right, he's right. That's right. Seeing that the light is here, the divine being is the infinite being. Is there something here that's timeless in our direct experience as light beings? That's all revelation is. It's like, oh, yes, okay. Is it possible to die in the light of infinite being? Can we find that? Death can't find it. Infinite being, does an infinite being know death? This is glorious. Is there an object here in the light of divine being, infinite being? Can we find an object anywhere looking? Does the light know anything about an object? Objects? Does it know anything about space? Is space known in the light of divine being? We start with the light. And see is that the light then provides the answers. That's where the answers are coming, through the light. And then divine expression comes up, miracle impulses until they hit an asteroid. So forgiveness is taking all the beliefs and the desired experience and collapsing that whole belief that the field is. And we got Jesus, that voice, coming in and say, here's how you dodge it and cease to invest in keeping that debris field so it feels like you're always unhappy. Even though we see the light, and a lot of spiritual teachers will say, okay, you see the light, okay. Well, the wise ones will tell you, you're not done yet, you're just starting. Because until we're at perfect, infinite happiness, we're just tasting. Yet we know there's light. So there's still the plane of consciousness of, okay, Jesus. So he says, yes, you can choose immediately. See, there's light. That's it. Boom, we're done. Just cease to engage in the rest of it. Spontaneous, yes. Powerful enough to do it, yes. For some reason, we like the dabbling with the devil. So then we go in, okay, he's still there. Does Jesus abandon us if we don't accept we're light immediately? Full on voice for God, nothing else. And that's why this look with a new covenant. It's been so helpful here because it's like honing in here, look here so directly at every, here's the belief and here's what you're wanting to experience in that debris field. You want to, and we're going to go through some of those again, just check in and see if there's any desire. And then we can really recognize, start to see that contrast between infinite light, infinite vast, without limitation. Can we find limitation in infinite light? Marinating, as Muji says, as infinite, unchanging light. We do, it's a powerful means. Jesus calls us this, lesson 44, go empty-handed to your God. And he'll be there. And then let Jesus go, okay, let me show you where those desires are. So very interesting here. Again, I haven't read, it's been a while since I've read the course text, but obviously Jesus has been delivering out those, okay, here's a belief, here's your desired experience very directly. And how the four core beliefs of the ego thought system directly from the ACIM text. Those are in chapter 20. I think there are actually two places in. I know they're definitely in chapter 20 of A New Covenant, where he goes through and says, here's the desire for experience. And then there's some things that show up in the urText. Feels good to talk to Jesus, ask him what. Oh, so much love talking about this. I'll tell you that. Oh my gosh. About the urText. Because there's a lot of argument. Oh my gosh, it's like infinite love talking about it. So I can feel this is a topic. Infinite love has some expression on. So much love in this, the urText. Because there's like a lot of arguments over it. And it's Jesus going, just stay out of the argument. Follow me. I'll tell you what's valuable and when it's valuable for you. That's helpful. Because, everybody's going, well, was that really Helen? And was Helen really listening to Jesus? Or was she fine-tuned enough? We can go directly to Jesus with every statement he says in there and ask it if it's true in the light of divine being. And hear it. Actually, is this true? So we can know because we are divine light. And so we can ask in the light of divine being, is this true or is this not true? Or is this helpful? And it's really about what's given right now. Every single thing, everything in consciousness points back to ourselves. So if we get lost in the argument about, okay, is this true? Is this what Helen said? Was she whatever, I could see this would be mind-blowing for anybody. Actually, it's mind-blowing for me, at least start looking at when I go back and read what came out it's like, how did that happen? What came out of a new covenant? It's like, I don't know where that came from, but you do know where it comes, sort of, At least I had some familiarity with Jesus's teachings. I don't know how she did it. I have no idea. It's amazing. Anyway, but I just feel like it's very valuable whenever we're looking at something, or first, is it guided? Is this an expression of infinite love right now? Is this the highest value? If our highest value is infinite love, okay, let's see. So I hear in my heart, the one who knows saying, go to urText and look in there and see what's in there for you right now. And ask me. So we don't have to have any doubts, because we can ask and he'll tell us directly. Thank you. What's interesting here too is how he was talking, the context in which he talks about those four core beliefs of the ego thought system. And he says, whenever projection in its inappropriate sense is utilized, so whenever a piece of debris is being created, rather than followed, right? Rather than divine light, we're going to go out and find something out in form, right? To blame it on. Projection is like something out there. We're going to foist it out there. it always, and this is another Jesus capitalization, A, implies it's some emptiness or lack of everything. So any projection is lack. So that's why it's really helpful, the desire to experience lack, to look at that, yes. And Jesus will keep showing us, here's where you're desiring an experience of feeling lacking of all that is. Because in the light of divine being, can we see any lack? In our direct experience as light being, can we find lack there? So that projection is the desire to throw out the experience of lack into an experience projected into form. Now we're going to experience it. Must be exist, and that it is within man's ability to put his ideas instead of the truth, right? So we're now, bing, goes out, and then our own ideas about what's happening when nothing's actually happening. The light of divine being, no matter how much we would project and make up around the world, is any of it true? In honesty of God, can we find that to be true? Anything in the world? That's infinite happiness right there, to be 100% wrong. And be reminded every day, you're wrong, you're wrong. So, okay, so there it goes. If you will consider carefully what this entails, the following will become quite apparent. First, the assumption is implicit that what God has created can be changed by the mind of man. So an assumption. So it feels good just, Jesus, is there any remaining assumption that I can change what is of God? My mind, it's possible to change that. I'm willing to look directly. Well, and look, in the light of divine being, in the light, is it possible to change what God has created in the light of divine being? And like put that itch for projection to find something outside ourselves, like squarely right in the light of divine being. To see, can this be true? Even if we want to project, we want it to be outside of ourselves, in the light of divine being, can we find that to be true in direct experience? So he's dismantling projection in these four. It's pretty, this sounds really valuable to me. to dismantle projection, because there's so much, because it's lack, right? It's like, I'm going to invest in the experience of lack by saying it's about something outside of myself. And I'm going to try to fill myself up in what Jesus is calling, get salvation through lack, through projection, to try to be saved, like this horizontal movement into form, that somehow I'm going to be saved if I go into projection in the world. And that flips the world immediately. Lack, like the desire for experience, it flips the world into suffering immediately, to try to fill the void by going out into projection. So it's really good to go, okay, Jesus, help me uncouple that belief that there's some kind of value in, trying to hunt down the culprit in the world, the one who done me wrong song, trying to get lack filled. And we can ask, in the light of divine being and our direct experience as light beings, the wisdom of the light within, is projection a desire for an experience of lack? And hear the answer within. This is where that direct looking at desired experience is so powerful, and just put that whole energetic of any kind of belief that any God has created can be changed by our minds in the light of divine being. And look as directly as the light at this one. Let that burn out. Fire might rise in this one. Just stand in it. Stand in the light of divine being. And if any energy starts moving, and just praise Jesus for showing it. Because that's like that energetic investment in the asteroid belt. And Jesus going, let me show you how to chop that right off at the knees. I'll take all the help I can get. Okay, so here we go. Second, the concept. So in order to have a concept, there have to be beliefs and desires below to make a concept. So he's going to collapse that what is perfect can be rendered imperfect or wanting. Is intruded. So a set of beliefs are just put into, not only can I project, and not only can I, outside of God, but then the supporting in that projection, I can have an experience of lack. It is possible. So we look with the light of divine being. Is it possible for what the divine light, infinite light, is infinite light perfect in our direct experience as light beings? Can we find like any kind of little glitches in there? Any imperfection? This is where revelation meets the miracle. Right? Because we can see this now, infinite light, and then look directly at the concept that perfection of divine light can truly in any way be lacking, the desire for experience of lack, and put that in the light of divine being. Because lack is merely a desired experience that is the belief that lack is possible. In the light of divine being, can lack be found as possible in our direct experience? As light beings. That's the simplicity of correction. Put all sense of lack, because the whole gig, and these energies of lack may arise, and then we could just be present. Oh, I get it. I see it. I can feel that itch to have an experience of missing something. So instead of us going out and projecting or tossing it out, we're really being present with that itch to go into projection, into the desire for an experience outside of ourselves. At least that's the experience here with Jesus. I'm so grateful for it. Oh, I see what you mean. I feel that itch. Oh, I feel. But it's like it burns it out, you know, in the light of divine. Jesus, will you handle this for me? I can hear the celebration in heaven. Yes. So it's admitting the desire for lack, okay? And here, you know, rather than going out into projection and diverting, we're just really present and looking directly at it. Like no running away, because the ego would run away and not look directly at these things to see that lack is impossible. The belief, okay, so here's 3. The belief that man can distort the creations of God, including himself, has arisen. So here comes the belief, the attempt to project, keeping the concept that something's imperfect is how projection, the belief that God's creation has arisen and is tolerated. That's helpful. because it's telling us we're putting up with our own miscreation. We're tolerating these things. As he says in Honesty of God, that's just glorious. See that you're the light. Admit you're denying the light. So he's saying right here, you're tolerating the admission that we're tolerating the distortion. We're tolerating the debris field rather than and making ourselves little weaknesses, little weak experience. Distort the and is tolerated. So, and we can ask Jesus this. Let's look look directly at this. Jesus, is there any toleration? Because we can see, okay, we'll start with the light of divine being. In the light of divine being, can the ego, the idea we have, can we distort the creations of God in our direct experience? So you put any thoughts around distortion, desire to distort, that itch to distort to create that debris field that blocks the recognition of divinity. It arises, and then we say it's okay. So Jesus, is there any desire to make distorting myself tolerated, to tolerate my own distortions? Please show that to me. And may I give this to you? That's all he says, just give it to me. The desire to tolerate my own distortions, the distortions. Will you take them happily? We have to give them willingly, because if we tolerate them, will the light come and say, no? You remember he said, I'm going to take those scissors away from you and you're going to yell. But that's what we're doing. We're yelling that he's trying to take, he's just poking ourselves in the eye. I love it. It's such a great visual, isn't it? And we all know it because we've all had either kids or, somebody we're babysitting or a nephew or something that's going to run with a pair of scissors. Either that or they're going to find a safety pin and try to stick it in an electrical socket. And when you try to take it away, they are going to scream. And it's hilarious to see that we are doing that to ourselves by tolerating. We can't have tolerance for it. That's what I'm seeing. Can divinity, Jesus? No. We can no longer tolerate. That's why he's saying cease to deny is to no longer tolerate these distortions. This is acceptance of divine power, is to no longer tolerate these distortions. And then he goes forth that since man can create himself, the direction of his own creation is up to him. So we can see that stepwise building that suddenly we're off, launched like a satellite into the debris field, and we get to create ourselves. In the light of divine being, is self-creation possible? Is self-creation really trying to have this experience, this dream? Is self-creation a dream? First of all, that's helpful to ask. In the light of divine being, can we find self-creation is possible in the light? Light doesn't know anything. What is that? Yet when this desire to play in the self-creation through projection and debris field to block the light, as soon as we see the whodunit is the decision to play in the debris field, try to keep miscreating ourselves over and over. I'm less than God. I'm weak. I can't hear the voice for God. We play in that field of denial. He's showing us how projection, it's an endless loop of never feeling fulfilled by infinite light that we are. And all of this denies the miracle. Each one of these, self-creation denies the infinite creativity that's given through miracles, the true creativity, not creation of objects. Like, we're so used to creativity. That's why he does such a great job of describing made versus created. It's helpful to ask, in the divine light of being, what is true creation? Infinite light expressing whole and complete as it is creation. Communion with the Father. These related distortions represent a picture of what actually occurred in the separation. So now he's really chunking down, breaking out separation into the pieces. We can big bang backwards. We don't have to roll out into the big bang of suffering. We can see where each one of these steps in the projection of a desire for an experience of separation can be collapsed. None of this existed before, nor does it actually exist now. So we can ask, do any of these, does the separation exist in the light of divine being? Light and divine being find anything that's separated whatsoever? Yeah, we talked here, I think I've talked about it this week. So obviously for me to remember that, it's helpful for me to say it. We have to say no to these tolerations, to what we've tolerated before, because that toleration makes us feel helpless. It's designed to make us feel helpless, like we can't help ourselves. In some ways, we need the voice for God. We have 100% God dependency if we want truly to experience ourselves as the freedom that we are. None of this existed before, nor does it actually exist now. The world, as defined above, was made as a natural grand division or projecting outward of God. That is why everything which he created is like him. So in a way, it's like even consciousness is a microcosm of God. You can ask the divine light, is consciousness a microcosm of attempting to create like God? It's just that if it's believed that it's apart from God, if it's the little fiefdom of nothingness and it's invested in, it will be hell. When it becomes the idol more important than the light within, more greatly valued. Is anything in this world more valuable than the light if we look as honesty of God at the light within? Is the light infinite? Is anything in the world that's finite a match for infinite? Can it stack up against infinite? And even if a projection were to occur that something could possibly be outside of ourselves, in truth, in the light of divine being, can anything be outside of ourselves in our direct experience of the self, of the one? This is a direct experience that everything he says in the A Course in Miracles is true by direct experience. There's no waiting, he's saying, no waiting. See in the light what you are. And for me, he's saying, and I to express it, ask me. That's my lesson every day. So I guess that's what comes up every day. Ask me. You start to see its infinite happiness. And I talked about this before, and it's continually, like, it's such a deep learning about what function is. Like all the ideas I had about, I guess because there's such an investment in scarcity, right? That following the Holy Spirit is going to be loss, you know, these kinds of plays and consciousness, the desired experience, and seeing how the body gets used in various functions. Like I can hear him say, okay, your function is the garden. Now before, so much love even talking about this, right? It's just so love, just, you know, I loved gardening. I loved gardening. And so he'll use those kinds of things as a backdrop, but it's helpful to ask, because I value infinite light more than I value gardening. I'll walk away. And I see how he's training. The training is to just even to see if there's any, you know, attractiveness, any value in it, to listen and follow him in the garden. There's just an incredible, if you're a gardener, you may really love this. Let's see if I can remember. So maybe we'll watch it because it's so incredible. It's this guy up in Oregon that bought this property that was like ground stone, and he wanted to have a garden. So he would pray to the Holy Spirit to tell him how to do this garden. Garden of Eden, I think it's called. I'm telling you, this is so off the rails, fabulous. He would ask God everything about how to do this garden. And now he has like the most amazing garden. He has to give away food. And this is a reminder for me. So thank you, Jesus. And now he takes people on the tour and talks about the Bible. It's just, I mean, he's so in full service to the Spirit in that garden. It's just really, so it's, you know, asking Jesus too is in having, it's so comforting to have him say, okay, this is your function right now. This is helpful for you to somehow buy plants for the center, you know, but it's so far beyond the actual movement of picking plants. It can't be described. Oh, I can hear him now. You know, he's performing miracles. He's teaching through that how to express divinity. You know, and I can see, like, before it was like, I mean, I did love the flowers and everything. I mean, I was like a flower addict, really. We're talking about serious, anything that bloomed, I had it, you know, I just had to have it. And everything had to be like full color. I'm not sure I could have green in the garden. It had to be all flowers and stuff. And it's strong. I'm just saying, you know, but so this comes in as a surprise, because then there was an idea, okay, you know, but I see how he's like retranslating the whole thing, because now objective experience. Oh yeah. And then, okay. And so then I can have people over and show them my garden, you know, right. My garden and how it looks and that kind of thing. And with this, there's just love in the movement of, okay, Jesus, you know, tell me, guide me. Like I was having a conversation about, you know, guide me on everything. Guide me on which plants to buy. Guide me on, you know, when to buy the plants, when to go buy. I mean, I feel so much love even talking about it. It's like a whole different experience of, you know, how he uses these things that, you know, seem so ordinary, you know, because I'm thinking, oh, spiritual journey. I don't know what I was thinking I'd be doing. You know, it's very practical. It serves the center. And he just says, okay, this is your function, and it's helpful. Okay, this is your function. You're going to take care of the garden. That's one of your functions. Okay. But I let him guide the whole thing. and pray on everything. Is this in service? Because the value of infinite love is so much more valued than the flowers. It's like such a switch over to using it, to be guided. And he's teaching how miracles move through, how divine expression works. And it's helpful to ask him, is this in function? Is this given for the purpose? It's sort of like the answer to, is this what's most helpful for the recognition and celebration of divinity? Is this a divine expression? And whatever assignments that we seem to get. So it's very helpful, the voice for God every day, and having that conversation that we can all have because we hear Jesus. It should be noted that the opposite of pro is con. Okay, this is right after he says, the world is defined above was made as a natural grand division or projection outward of God. That is why everything he created is like him. Well, that's why God is in everything I see, right? It's still, even though it's a quote unquote projection, it's still within God. We can see in the light of divine being, infinite light. Has anything that we project out, does it ever leave us? If we pretend there's a projection, can it ever leave? Then we can see directly what he says, thoughts leave not their source. In the light of infinite being, can a thought ever leave source? In our direct experience, we can see in the light, it can't, because all's one. It should be noted that the opposite of pro is con. Strictly speaking, then, the opposite of projecting is conjecting. A term which referred to a state of uncertainty or guesswork. Other areas arise in connection with ancillary defenses to be considered later. For example, dejection, which is obviously associated with depression, injection, which can be misinterpreted readily enough in terms of possession fallacies. Now, particularly penetration, he's talking about sexuality now, possession. He spends quite a bit of time. And rejection, which is clearly associated with denial. I could see this was like a major hook for Helen. Here's a psychologist, and now he's talking about projection, Freud, conjection, which are conjecting, all the areas, other areas arise in connection with defenses, all the defenses that start coming up. In consciousness, we conject all the time, conjection, guessing. So we're just kind of guesswork about what's actually happening in consciousness, which can be misinterpreted readily enough in terms of possession fallacies, okay? Owning something, whether it's seeming to own another body, seeming to own our body, seeming to possession would be possession of objects, and rejection of objects is clearly associated with denial. All these are denials of divinity. He's giving us all the different ways consciousness plays in denial. It should be noted that rejection can be used as refusing, a term which necessarily involves a perception of what is refused as something unworthy. This is getting really deep. All are denials. That's why it's just good to go to the twitch. If it's a twitch, it's a denial. And it shows up in a myriad in the dance through projection, conjection, what's all dejection. All these experiences desired, rejection, refusing, all the ways in which we try to push God out. Feels like that's quite a bit. Maybe we'll pick this up. We'll see what he says, to really marinate on those, to ask him about any of these 4 core beliefs that make projection possible, seem real to us, that something can be outside of ourselves, when in the light of divine being, we can see that it really can't. It's just so inspiring to invite the voice in. So much love in that, because it's like coming home to ourselves, to admit that we can't leave home. In the light of divine being, is it possible to ever leave home? Even if consciousness, our dance card is filled with the devil, 300 dances with the devil a day, and we can still ask, in the light of divine being and honesty of God, can we ever left love? In the light of divine being, love be limited in any way in our direct experiences, light beings? Is it possible to limit love in any shape or form in the light of divine being? So now we have revelation combined with miracle mindedness, looking for the miracle, talking to that voice and go, okay, show me, show me. And he'll lead us right out of temptation. Right out of the debris field. And that divine expression of the miracle, the expression of divinity, is that debris is cleared by looking at it with the light of divine being. We can see, does any debris last? Let's make up a really good debris. I don't know what it would be. The Holocaust. And put the Holocaust in the light of divine being and see, does that stand in the light as true? Just an example. There could be all kinds of horrific events. Let's take 9/11. Does 9/11 exist in the light of divine being? Does anything from our past, any memory, stand in the light of divine being? He's really offering such a speed of correction. That's why he says, give it to me, give it to the light. We can do it in our minds with an image of God in our hands and just place it in Jesus's light. That's the willingness. And to so quickly go through with him every one of these denials through that voice, because we can hear the voice. It's just so much happiness in this. And to see in the light of divine being in these circles that nothing stands before the light of divinity, unless we desire to play a dream. But now we know what the signal is, the dream signal, and we can see that little flag go up. Because we can see the peace as light. Does the light know anything other than peace? And we can see how we feel when we focus on infinite light. And then we can see the contrast between that grab, like it's a grab that comes. That's the investment. That's the desire for an experience. So now instead of going, okay, you did it to me, go, Jesus, quickly show me. I'm willing to see my desire for this grab, this pain, however it shows up. I'm willing to see it in the light of divinity and see it cannot stand before the light of who I am. And to no longer, love what he says, tolerate it. distorting the creations of God is tolerated. That's humbling. And to ask him to show me any toleration where I'm tolerating the experience of distorting the creations of God. That would be my brother. Any beliefs about my brother, that my brother is anything less than like perfect, one little thought, and tolerate that, which is any thought about my brother is what I believe about myself. So tolerating that. So Jesus, show me. So I thank you for joining us again today in the light of divine being and the celebration that divinity first. And then Jesus comes in with the broom and helps us clean up the debris field that never happened. Thankfully, the light will never agree with us. Can we find it any time that the light agrees with us that projection is true? In our direct experience, can we find a single instance where the light agrees that projection is true and that we're not already one with the light? Amen. Love from San Juan Cosala. Adios.